Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of bands that only released one album and then disappeared, or split up, or went back to their primary projects. Anyways, we're looking at a band today called JOHN FRUM. Interesting name of a band. They're from Relapse Records, which tells me I'm probably going to enjoy this quite a bit. We're going to be looking at the music video for the track Memory Palace. Let's dive in. It's very quiet right now. Stating the obvious, I know. Just eerie, haunting. Cyclical, stuck in place, fitting with the eeriness is definitely making me feel trapped. Lovely use of space. It's never entirely devoid of sound, but there is an ebb and flow of who is doing the most between the guitars and the drums. Live Dissonance. Golly. Just overwhelming, and leading back into that same space we were at the beginning with just a larger sound in general. Wailing. Violence. That is what this section reminds me of. Alright, Relapse Records, how about you master your videos a little better? There's no reason I needed to be so much louder than the rest of the music, which already felt ridiculously loud. Am I thinking of a different Relapse Records, or... said based on the label, I thought I was going to enjoy that, but I don't think that could have been farther from my type of music if they had tried to purposefully make music that I would not like. Golly. And see, this took me on a journey. I'm not going to say I enjoyed it, but I got tooken on one. It's my southern coming out. I got tooken on one. This group is a master at sound spheres specifically, but also just masterfully dragging the listener through a series of distinct yet seemingly similar at times sections designed to overwhelm to the point where I don't know, you just your eyes just kind of glaze over and you zone out. Forced meditation, forced out of body experience. You can't look away. They demand so much of your attention, but it's really difficult to, at least for me, to keep my attention on them for very long. It's such a sonic assault, just constantly demanding more and more of the space around them. I didn't think the sound could get any bigger than it did, and yet it continued to feel like it enveloped more and more of the space around my head. I can only imagine what this sounds like through speakers. The beginning of the song, well, in retrospect, was a bit deceptive, but it also perfectly tied into where we ended up. And it all sort of comes together into this auditory maliciousness. It feels like the song wishes to do me harm. It is constantly making me anxious, fearful, tense. The beginning does it well with note relationships, though, intervals. There's a lot of dissonance going on at the beginning, there's a lot of eerie timbres. It crafts this tension and anxiety through minimalism. There really isn't a lot going on, but the things that are going on are all pushing towards an imbalance of sorts. Most of it being a harmonic imbalance, creating that dissonance, that tension in the notes themselves, and then the sparseness of the notes, the emptiness of the sound sphere add on to that tension in the listener. It's like walking down a dark alley, hearing only your footsteps and then another. But no matter where you look, you don't see the source of these other footsteps. The minimalism is what drives that. If you're in a busy mall, the sounds of lots of footsteps is not alarming at all. It's the sparseness that elevates the tension. We exist in this space for a couple of minutes before being shunted right into the deep end of whatever they make with their guitars and drums. It is just, is aggressive post metal a thing? Is there a better word than aggressive? This is a lot of music designed with texture in mind more so than melody or harmony. It's about how these notes sound, not necessarily what the notes are in particular. The movement of the notes is not, or is more important than the specific notes they are. We could be in any key on any notes as long as we are playing the lowest tone we can on our guitar and playing the half step and the whole step above that. The notes are not important. Even the intervals are only tangentially important to just the raw sound of the tones of the guitar and the movement itself, the rising and falling of notes. And so we have these really big guitar and bass tones that, through a lot of this track, work in tandem with each other, playing the same things to multiply their sound until you just have this massive wall being projected at you. The drums are not necessarily lining up harmonically with them, but the drums do have rhythmic ideas that match what the guitars are doing, and the vocals even join in on this occasionally as well, because the sound wasn't big enough and needed to multiply even more. The fact that this whole band works in unison for a majority of this track to just deliver the biggest sound possible is what determines, or is what allows the track to have the weight that it does. Now, interestingly, we don't necessarily start at this full weight capacity. One of the earliest sections where the metal aspect came in, I think it was actually the first section after our intro, I had complimented the use of space, in that we would hear a drum fill with no guitar, and then we would have a simpler drum idea with a guitar riff over it, and then the guitars will cut out and the drums will fill. We always have this back and forth of the spotlight given to the guitar with some drumming under it, and the spotlight given to the drums with nothing around it. And so we have this on and off going on with the guitar. We have guitar, we don't have guitar. We have guitar, we don't have guitar. And the drums are on and off with their complexity. Simple idea, complex fill. Simple idea, complex fill. And it creates this ebb and flow, almost of these two battling ideas. But we only do this for this one section. After this point, though, when we decide that both the guitar and the drum should be going all in all the time, and it really doesn't take long to get there, this is the new identity of the track. Constant drumming, constant fills, constant aggression, constant guitaring, constant bassing, constant singing, screaming, growling, whatever. We even have layered growls at one point because the sound isn't big enough, right? This is where we are for the majority of the remaining 6 minutes of the track, give or take. It is just a constant onslaught with no release, no reprieve, no moment to breathe, no moment to relax. I'm really curious what happens when we get into the lyrics of Memory Palace, which honestly doesn't sound that bad. It kind of has a post-hardcore vibe to it, and I could easily take Memory Palace in a positive direction, and this music was just not what I expected given the title at all. But yeah, I'm curious how the lyrics square up to the musical themes at play here, because this is just an onslaught. If you survive to the 3.5, 4 minute mark, you have 5 minutes ahead of you of non-stop, aggressive, wall of sound, metally noise. And I say noise because it's not dissonant, and everything does work together for a vast majority of this. It's that unified wall of sound idea. But the notes don't matter. They could be using any instruments as long as they could have this aggression out of it. They could use any notes as long as they are this low in pitch, so that they can have the punch and grit to it as long as they're distorted. It doesn't really matter what they're playing or what notes they're playing. All they're focused on is the sound of it, which is noisy. It is just big and abrasive and heavy. So yeah, I'm going to call this noise in like the most positive way possible. They have taken musical instruments and turned them into noise instruments. And they did such a good job of it. So much so that I'm exhausted listening to what they produced out of it. There is a moment of release towards the end, and honestly, it was probably only a bar long, but it was all that I needed to just have a moment to smile. The bass separated off from what the guitars were doing and had a neat little bass line. I think the guitars even stopped playing for a moment. And there's this neat little bass line that went along, sort of rhythmically counter to what the drums were doing as far as the accent pattern. And it was a little bit of a showy ship kind of thing, showmanship, showing off. It was a neat little like 16th note run. Loved it. Gorgeous bass tone, highlighting a bass line, being a bit more complex and not just simple quarter notes on a bass on a pedal tone. And I was like, yeah, that was a nice moment. It was probably 2 seconds, but I was like, yeah, that's nice. And then it went away. The bass got buried again. It makes me wonder how much of this song actually has that cool bass line stuff going on that maybe I just didn't hear. And I'm curious if I didn't hear it because it never happened or if because it was buried by that massive guitar tone this whole time. And honestly, that's the whole thing right here. It's a heavy track full of weight. It's very in your face, it's aggressive and consistent. It starts off tense, putting you in a position of anxiety, and then pushes you off the cliff where your anxiety makes the falling even worse. You are already high strung, and now you are free falling with no way of being saved, and you just have to survive this onslaught where you are already teetering on the edge. There is no release until the end. And it takes a long time to get to the. I don't know about anyone else. That did not feel like a 10-minute song to me. That was like 25 minutes. Um, and I feel quite a bit older having listened to it. I suppose now is a good time as any to get into some lyrics and see what's going on there. You know, this is perfect. Well, lyrics are exhausting, both in the vast vocabulary utilized in it. I picked up most of it, but I could probably use a thesaurus for some of it. But also the fact that it is larger than life and difficult to understand and sort of chaotic in some ways, also directly stating chaos and destruction as elements in the lyrical themes, while also just being about these larger than life concepts. You see, right from the start, I knew I was in for a doozy. Propelling through the unknown, the world split in twain, tessellating ad infinitum. One was too small to grasp the scope, and endless expense of the protocosmic horizon lay in full upon the edges of what could no longer be considered reality. It is beautifully written, in twisting vocabulary that speaks towards the shattered state of our narrator's mental mind, his mind, uh, and speaks about how they have their mind torn asunder as they are exposed to universal truths that mortals should not be exposed to, and how this puts new ideas into their minds. He says, I waged the interminable war and solved the formulas yet to be proposed. I became the primordial, abolishing death, expanding into consciousness. Goes on to speak that he utilizes this newfound knowledge as his body mutates rapidly, trying to find a new form, something as big as a thought, but as small as a god, which I love that line. So good. Through this, he becomes creation itself, a new world born from him. Says such hubris this one had to fancy himself a creator. He already understands that this is not going to work well. To bring a world to fruition with the damaged sensibilities of man. Comes through with our final two lines that speak to the futility of trying to find order in this new element he finds himself in. He says the incumbent chaos, ultimate arbiter of creation, welcomes this new inhabitant with destruction's caress. Just wow. What a ride. And you know what? The idea of being given cosmic knowledge that a mortal mind cannot understand and being transformed into a beast that would be more fitting of someone who could have this knowledge, and eventually finding a way to also create a new world out of that, and understanding that it is fruitless to attempt to find order in it and allowing chaos to be the creator and to allow destruction to exist here as well. That is a heavy topic that is also exceptionally difficult to understand. It sounds wild, it's heavy, it's beyond my understanding. And honestly, the idea of becoming something other than human and having this cosmic knowledge seems like a horror story to begin with. So, all of the unsettling, anxious tension that is brought into this track from both our ambient opening to our exceptionally in your face, heavy, unified wall of sounds, metal we have throughout the rest of it makes perfect sense for this. Also, just the body horror of a human body transforming into something that would better reflect this cosmic knowledge and going to this probably gnarly transformation. The music just perfectly encapsulates the disgustingness of that. That sort of transformation is not going to be something that is beautiful. It's not going to be something that is palatable to look at. This is going to be horrific, and the music just captures that so well. I will never listen to this track again unless I want to be put to sleep because I'm so tired right now. But I'm so glad I listened to it. This is phenomenally profound on so many levels and thematically appropriate on every single tangent. It is just so well done. Those are my thoughts on John Frum's Memory Palace. What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Did anything stand out to you? Is there anything I said that maybe you want to add on to or correct me on? Put those thoughts down in the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you can find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find my music, a link to the Discord server, ways to support the channel, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of them. That wraps this one up. We have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, to wrap up this week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.